Hi all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be what I consider to be an interesting story because it does not involve true crime, but it does involve a horrific plane crash that occurred at Detroit Metro Airport in Michigan in 1987. I want to cover this story because this year is the 35th anniversary of the crash, and what many people may not know about it is that there was one sole survivor, a 4-year-old little girl who was traveling to Arizona from Detroit with her family. Every year the tragedy is remembered on the news in Michigan, and every year I think of her and what a miracle it was that she survived. I remember watching the news coverage when it happened, and it was just one of those stories that stayed with me. So, I thought I'd share it with you. On August 16th, 1987, Northwest Flight 255 traveling to Phoenix was cleared for takeoff at 8:44 p.m. Witnesses said as the plane lifted off the runway, it immediately began to rock from side to side, and it wasn't gaining altitude. Because it was flying so low, it hit a light pole, which caused the left wing to catch fire and disintegrate. The plane then rolled to the left, hit the roof of an Avis rental car building, and crashed on a Middle Belt Road, killing 2 people in their car. It broke apart, and the fuselage skidded down the road, hitting a freeway overpass and bursting into flames. 149 passengers were on board and 6 crew members, and only one little girl survived. The firefighter who found her said he was relatively new on the job, and when they received the call, they were told they were responding to an explosion near the airport. He said it was only when they got close to the fire that they saw the fuselage with Northwest on it and realized what they were dealing with. It goes without saying that he described the scene as horrific, but he said they needed to get through the wreckage as best as they could to search for survivors. And as he did, he found one. He said he saw a little arm poke out from an airplane seat that was upside down on the freeway. 4-year-old Cecilia Sheehan, still strapped into her seat, injured and burned, but still alive. He said he couldn't believe it, and even though she was injured, he was elated to find her. She was rushed to the hospital with fractures to her skull, collarbone, and left leg. Because she lost her mother, father, and brother in the accident, extended family members went to the hospital to stay with her and shield her from the media. After she recovered, she went to live with her aunt and uncle in Alabama, and we didn't hear much about how she was doing until she spoke out years later, doing an interview for a documentary called Soul Survivor, where she described how she doesn't remember the crash, thank God, but that she has the constant reminders of it all over her body. She said she can't help but be reminded of it every time she looks in the mirror, because she has scars on her arms, legs, and forehead. She said she realized what happened to her when she was in middle school or high school, and when she understood that she was the only survivor, it was confusing and stressful, and it made her angry, and she suffered from survivor's guilt. She wanted to know, why her? Why didn't her brother survive? Or her parents? The firefighter who saved her did an interview for the 35th anniversary and spoke out about the nightmare he was sent into that night. He said it was disturbing not knowing who the little girl he saved was for days after the crash. But then they were able to identify her by the nail polish she was wearing. Then, he said, in 2004 or 5, she reached out to him to talk to him, and she even invited him to her wedding. He said watching her walk down the aisle brought him to tears. She now has a child of her own, and said that finding the firefighter who saved her connected her to who she was before, and that was very important to her. A granite memorial was erected in 1994 in honor of the victims of Flight 255, and families of the victims still gather there to remember their loved ones. And for the rest of us, who remember the images of the horrible night, there's no escaping them every time we drive by the airport, even 35 years later. Reports said the crash was caused by the flaps not being extended for takeoff, and a malfunction in the system failed to alert the pilots of the problem. I can't imagine what it must have been like for the people who witnessed the crash, and I've always hoped that it happened so fast that the people on board didn't have time to realize what was happening. And thank God that Cecilia has no memory of that night. She said she got a tattoo of the plane to remind her of what she survived. A horrific tragedy that resulted in a miracle. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll be remembering the lives lost on that flight, along with hoping that everyone listening stays safe out there. And I'll see you on my next video.